Hi, good morning and afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled The State of the Customer Success Profession. We've allowed a couple of minutes to pass by, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome to all of our participants on the call right now. So I'm happy and pleased to have two guest speakers with me today. We have Kaiser Mullah-Feroz, the Chief Marketing Officer of Totango, and Evan Klein, Founder and President of Satrix Solutions. We're going to talk about the state of the customer success profession. I'm excited to see, the growing number of participants and the turnout that we have for today. Before we dive in, let me give you a quick background to today's webinar. Totango, for those of you who may not be familiar, is a customer success technology platform, and Satrix Solutions is a customer and employee feedback consulting firm. Both companies have recently published their own customer success industry reports, and our conversation today is going to focus on the findings of these studies. And so without further ado, I'm going to kind of let both of our speakers explain why we're here today and why do we do these surveys. And so I'm going to turn it over to Evan first. If I understand correctly, this is the first year Satrix Solutions has done this study on customer success. What prompted this, and what did your survey cover?
Yes, thanks, Christine. And this is the first year that we've done this study, and I imagine many more to come. Really, the concept evolved from the Customer Success Summit that we sponsored and attended earlier this year. Among 800 attendees, there were quite a few that we engaged and had some wonderful dialogue with. And it's clear that we're still in the early stages of a really exciting industry, and there are a lot of questions about the evolution of the customer success profession, about how teams are structured, about how people are compensated, about how the customer success professionals interact with clients. And so those are the types of questions and the interactions that we have with our own clients that sparked the idea to conduct this research study. Our clients are also stakeholders in this profession. We deal with a lot of chief customer officers, a lot of heads of the customer success departments, and there's an interest certainly in benchmarking and understanding what peers and colleagues are doing. So we wanted to contribute to the conversation. We thought it was an opportunity for us to add our voice and really share the context and insights that all of our contacts had to offer. Look, our area of expertise is gathering feedback from constituents, from wide groups of people, analyzing and interpreting that data. So we thought, hey, wonderful opportunity for us to really do what we do best and provide this back as a value add to the profession and to our clients in particular. One thing I want to point out finally is that the people that responded to our research study are very much like the people that are on this call. We are heavily focused on the B2B marketplace and small, mid-size, and larger businesses in business-to-business companies. And so in looking at the attendees on the call today, there's a real great overlay with types of folks that responded to our survey. So as you see all the data that we're going to be sharing with you, think about the reality that these are, in many respects, like companies.
Great. Thanks, Evan. And I know between the two surveys, we reached over 1,000 customer success professionals. And so I'd like to hand it over to Kaiser. What about you? Why did we at Totango do this survey?
Yeah, thanks, Christine and Evan. Excited to be on this webinar. So for us at Totango, this is actually the third year that we've done our Customer Success State of the Profession survey. We work with a lot of SaaS companies, a lot of subscription and recurring revenue businesses, and we definitely see, as Evan mentioned, that customer success is still a very, very young profession. And as an industry, professionals in this new space, in this new profession, are really sort of looking for benchmarking data around how do they actually execute on customer success, how do they grow their teams, hiring, compensation, staffing, goals, mandates, challenges. We hear a lot of these questions from our customers, from other SaaS executives that we work with. And so we've made the survey an annual exercise at Totango. It covers everyone from chief customer officers and VPs of customer success to directors and customer success managers. And so this is something that really, as we've done over the last 3 years, we've definitely seen certain trends evolve. And it's interesting to see how the industry is growing and how it's changing. It's definitely changed just in the last 3 years, and I'm looking forward to share some of those findings with all of you. Now, one of the interesting data points that really stuck with me at our Customer Success Summit, which we wrapped up in March of this year, is this chart that someone presented from LinkedIn. It shows a 500% jump in the number of customer success jobs which were posted on the site. 500% just in a 12-month period. And I think that really underscores for us how rapidly this profession is growing and why there is so much interest and so much demand for benchmarking data on customer success. So that's part of the reason why we do these studies, and it really helps bring the industry together and gets conversations going within the profession.
Great. Thank you both for giving that background. For everyone on the call today, here's just a quick agenda of the sections and topics that we're going to dive into. There are 3 main buckets: team and organization, goals and challenges, and compensation. And then we're saving 15 to 20 minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A. And I'll just go ahead and take this moment to let you know that we'd love for you to submit any questions you have for either speaker on any material presented in the bottom left corner in the chat box. And if you're having any audio issues, please go ahead and check your connectivity and test your system. I can send out that link in the chat window. So thank you. With that, let's go ahead and dive right into team and organization. And I believe, I'm sorry that I'm jumping ahead too much. So Evan, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, it's great. I think this is a really great place to start. It's one of the most interesting takeaways that we found from the research study that we conducted. And the question was posed, who does your head of customer success report to? Now, what you can see in the top half of this slide is more than a third of organizations surveyed said, hey, our head of customer success reports directly to the CEO. So a direct line to the CEO, which is really impressive and quite a significant shift over the past 4 or 5 years. And if you look across the categories on the top there, you see 17% COO, then you scroll over 9% president, 7% chief customer officer. So the vast majority of respondents have a direct link to someone on the executive team, someone in the C-suite. Now, you don't have to go too far back to think about, the sort of precursor to the customer success profession. A lot of those individuals reported into potentially a customer support organization or professional services. And here we are, 2015, and the vast majority of the folks that responded are really engaged heavily with the C-suite. And I think that, that reflects the empowerment that the customer success folks have now within the organizations. I mean, the C-suite is obviously very in tune, more so than they used to be, and very interested in hearing about what customer success professionals are doing and what they're seeing. I think some of this, by the way, has come about because of the level of interest among the venture capital community. And that's something that we've seen quite a bit as well, as many of our clients have been referred to us from venture capital investors who want their portfolio companies to really focus and emphasize in this area. So there's this widespread recognition today, in contrast to even just 5 years ago, that customer success really is a profit center. And there are dramatic impacts that you can have on business outcomes by focusing and investing in this area. And so the interest among the venture capital community and among executives has really changed the dynamic to where customer success professionals are directly linked to the C-suite and frankly being held accountable and we'll talk about a little bit later, also given more and more resources to expand their organizations. Now, I think, Kaiser, you are seeing much of the same thing in the study that you guys conducted, right?
Yes, Evan. On this particular point, I think our data is very much in the same direction. In fact, our survey showed that 34% of customer success organizations report directly to the CEO. And what is really amazing about this is that this number is double what we saw in our study last year. So just in 1 year, we're seeing that the profile of customer organizations is really rising within companies. And we see this in the market every day as we work with SaaS companies and recurring revenue and subscription businesses. Customer success is fast becoming, as you said, sort of a board and CEO level priority. Customer success now has a seat at the table right next to sales and marketing. And if you think about it, this really makes perfect sense. If you look at the numbers behind subscription companies, within a few years of operations, the revenue you get from your existing customers becomes a big portion of your overall top line. And as you progress with your business, more and more, the revenue that you're getting from your existing business begins to take over, and it becomes a much more significant portion of your business than what you get from new customers year after year. So definitely customer success is of paramount urgency. I think boards of companies, as you mentioned, and venture capitalists and investors are all focusing on customer success. It's getting a lot of attention, and we're seeing the market really move in this direction. Just the last 9 to 12 months, I think, has made a phenomenal difference. So things are really, really moving and progressing and building up and picking up with customer success. Now, as we sort of look at how things are changing in the market and with the industry, we also looked at how long have companies had customer success. And our survey shows that more than 75% of companies have had customer success teams for 3 years or less. More than 60% of customer success professionals have been in their roles for 3 years or less. And a whopping 95%, that was a surprising number for us. 95% of our survey respondents came to customer success from other fields, other functions. Only 5% said that they had previously worked in customer success or saw customer success as where they really started their careers. So this is definitely a sign that the profession, the customer success profession, is still in its early days. And we also, in addition to that, we also saw that customer success teams are growing very, very rapidly. Over 3/4 of the companies that we polled had expanded their staffing levels by more than 25%. And when we drilled down into that number, more than 1/3 of those had actually doubled their staff within just the last 12 months. So on the whole, we're seeing that the industry is very new. It's, a lot of people have just started in customer success just in the last 2 to 3 years, and the teams are growing very, very rapidly. Now, Evan, I believe you guys looked at a different angle around growth. I think you did look at expansion, but from the standpoint of future growth, if you'd like to sort of speak to that a bit.
Yes, that's right. So the question that we posed in our research was, how much do you expect that your customer success team will grow over the next 12 months? Now, with any survey data, you have to keep into context. Some of our respondents had teams of 2 that they envisioned maybe growing to 4, obviously 100% increase there, and then some that had much larger teams that they were going to add on. But in general, if we averaged across all of our respondents, we saw that the teams would grow by about 87% in size, which is quite dramatic. Certainly, there's a level of interest and focus and investment that's happening in this industry, and companies are looking to add significant resources to their customer success teams. And there's a number of reasons for that. Certainly, we alluded to a few of them. The much more wide-held belief that customer success is a profit center, and Kaiser alluded to this also. It's not just nice to have concept. It's a must have. It's critical to our business success, and we need to invest in this area. And not only that, it's the right thing to do from a business perspective. And so there's a lot of interest in hiring in this space. And the other thing, clearly it's an important touch point between the company and its customers. And in SaaS businesses historically, it hasn't been as high touch as maybe a professional services organization. So what the software companies are realizing that, hey, we got to increase the frequency of that touch, and to do that we need resources. And this is a terrific way of keeping our finger on the pulse of what our customers want, what their expectations are, what their sentiment is, and in general, just deepening and strengthening our engagements with our customers. So that widely held belief is contributing to a significant interest as far as growing the customer success teams. So as we move forward here, again, I thought this was one of the more interesting takeaways from our research. So we asked the question for each of the respondents to essentially self-identify their maturity level of their customer success organization. And you can see here on the top, these are the options that we gave, just getting started, established, but we have a ways to go, fairly sophisticated, more advanced, and then world-class. And really, really interesting how most of the companies really fell into those first two buckets. So we know the industry is growing, and we realize that there are a lot of companies that are sort of just getting started, and that represented about a third of our respondent count. But if you look at established, but we have a ways to go, about half put themselves in that category, which I think is really interesting. And there's a couple of things that came out in the open-ended feedback subsequent to this question, right? So we got a lot of verbatim commentary. And what that told us was a couple of things. Yes, it's early. The industry is still working through its maturation phase. We're still sort of figuring all this out. So that's a good chunk of the established, but we have a ways to go selection. But also because, if you think about the people that represent and make up the customer success professional, we are high EQ, right? We are very emotionally intelligent people. We have set a high bar for ourselves as far as the level of engagement that we want to have with our customers. We're a very passionate group. And in that regard, I think we set that high bar, right? And so we think about what we really truly aspire to be and that level of customer intimacy and customer advocacy that we want, and we're not satisfied with where we are today. So I think that also, and the verbatim commentary supported this, was a part of the established, but we have a ways to go. The folks that run these organizations and work inside these organizations want more. They feel really strong about what we can do and the impact that we can have on our businesses, and they want more resources and they want more buy-in. And so, that's a really interesting dynamic as well. And then if you scale up, you see fairly sophisticated and more advanced than most represented about 20% in aggregate. So if you look at the bottom half of this slide, you can see the main hurdles that prevented an increase in that sense of maturity. And one of them is certainly limited resources. Now, that is twofold, right? It's an inability to scale because I have not been allocated the budget, or it's an inability to scale because I'm just having a tough time finding qualified people. Again, thinking about the context of, the high bar that we set, we want the right types of people to be in our organization, and sometimes they're not that easy to find. And because, as Kaiser alluded to in that LinkedIn chart that he shared earlier, so many people are hiring for these roles, there's a lot of competition for them. So then we look at the hurdle number 2. It's challenges in converting the data into action. A lot of respondents said, hey, I would consider ourselves more mature in this area if we were taking action on all of the wealth of data that we had access to. Now some companies said they wanted more access to data. But you think about the company level data, the customer level data, the customer feedback data, the product usage data. There's a lot there. If in fact you are able to obtain it all, you have to do something with it. You have to convert it into something meaningful and something actionable and actually drive change. And I think a lot of our respondents said they just weren't there yet. And then 3, the lack of company alignment is around, hey, we're passionate about this, and in some cases the C-suite is passionate about this, but we need a company-level commitment. We need this across the organization, everybody to understand how important this is, the role that they play in customer success and the engagements that we have, and that just wasn't there yet as well. And so they were trying to rally the troops and get everyone aligned in that regard. And so we got a lot of quotes and feedback, verbatim commentary. This one I thought was one that was somewhat representative. And, you could see it's a smaller customer success team. I'm only a person managing a large number of clients. But if you move on from there, it says, unfortunately, customers who are on fire get the most attention. And that is definitely a common complaint among customer success professionals, is that we're constantly putting out fires. We're dealing with escalations. We're not able to be as proactive as we want to be because we're constantly being reactive. And that was, I think, indicative of a lot of the feedback that we received. So I thought now would be a great opportunity for us to pause for a moment and offer up a poll. I'm curious as to everyone on the call, your thoughts. If you went into the C-suite and you campaigned on one thing that you could get maybe for 2016 that you believe would accelerate the maturity level of your customer success organization, what would you ask for? And you see the choices here: technology, ability to hire more people, more customer data or metrics, greater buy-in, and best practices for CSMs. Just really, understanding what peers are doing and what's the right approach to structuring our team and so forth. So how would you respond to this question? What's the one thing that you would fight for with your leadership team that you think would really accelerate the maturity level of your customer success organization?
We're getting some good responses. I love the comment in the chat window that says all of those reasons. They don't like being able to only select one.
Right.
This is great. So everyone keep submitting. We'll give you 10 more seconds. All right, I think we'll go ahead and...
Christine, did you want me to skip to results?
I don't know. The numbers are still growing.
Okay.
It looks like more customer data and metrics is the leader right now. Okay, I think let's go ahead and close it out. So go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, more customer data and metrics, which is really interesting, but not immensely surprising. What we find in working with companies, and again, our clients are B2B. Some are small, 10, 20, 50 million in revenue. Some are multiple billions in revenue. And what's interesting is they're all challenged with having access to all of their own customer data, and then also gathering other elements of data, demographic data, usage data, a lot of the elements that I talked about, customer sat data. And so I think what it shows here is that people on the call want to be empowered with more information that they can use to make decisions. What's interesting here, greater buy-in among leadership only got 16% of the people on the call, which is a good sign. It suggests to me that even in the 4 or 5 months that since we've done our research study, maybe more and more companies are having success getting that buy-in, and so that's nice to see. Kaiser, do you see anything here that stands out to you?
Yes, I think the last point that you mentioned, Evan, about the fact that the responses for greater buy-in among leadership is not amongst the highest here. And I think that's certainly something that we saw in our survey, which may be a bit different from what you guys saw, and we'll talk more about that when we get into the goals and challenges section. So it'll be interesting. I think this data is actually pretty close to what we saw in our survey.
Very good. Very good. Okay, well, let's thank you all for your input there. Very interesting. And we'll use this feedback, by the way, to think about how we structure future research endeavors that ultimately we hope will help all of you from an insight and benchmarking and best practices perspective. So appreciate your input here. So let's move on. We also posed the question in our study about staffing based on annual recurring revenue. And, look, we have to have a number of asterisks in mind, if you will, here, because there are a lot of different types of companies, a lot of different business models, and you have to think about that in the construct of how people responded to the survey. But if you look at the annual recurring revenue per CSM, you can see most of them fall into the 100,000 to 5 million range. Obviously, that's a pretty wide range. In looking at the data more specifically, we see a lot of them are 750,000 to a few million in revenue. That's where the preponderance of responses fell into. And so, there's a number of things to keep in mind here. One is that certainly many of the companies that responded to our study said, look, we tier our ratios. And so we tier our customers and assign them ratios based on that. And so it seems to me that's a very common approach when you have enough resources, enough staff in your customer success profession. You start looking at those different tiers, and those tiers take a number of different forms. Of course, it could be your highest revenue customers. It could be your customers with highest usage. It could be your customers with biggest opportunity to grow. And so we saw a little bit about that in our survey. But in general, that tiering factor seemed to be really important. And what we found is that a lot of companies really want to keep in tune with their customers' needs. And so this is where some of the feedback programs come into play, right? So you think about how do I know how to tier my organization? It's got to be partially dependent on or informed at least by what my customers want, what they expect, the competitive dynamic, and how that comes into play. So it's that high touch level and the back and forth and the engagement that's going to help inform your tiering strategy. Now, Kaiser, you guys looked at this as well as far as tiering is concerned, right?
Yes, Evan. So we looked at it from a slightly different angle. And in this particular survey about the state of the customer success profession, we didn't specifically ask the respondents about the AR to CSM ratio, but we actually published a report earlier this year, which we called the Customer Retention Cost Report, in which we actually looked at this. And what we found, we did a lot of discussions within the industry when we were publishing this report around the customer retention cost. And we found that revenue per CSM, which you just presented, is actually a pretty common way with which companies think about how to go about customer success staffing. And from all the conversations we had, the most frequently quoted figure that we've seen is a revenue number of $2 million per CSM. But when we actually sort of dug into this and began doing a bit of segmentation across the people we were speaking to, we found that in practice, this figure actually is significantly influenced by the complexity of your business. And we looked at complexity as a combination of three factors. One was the sophistication of your product. The second was the maturity, or rather the lack of maturity of your industry or market, how new it is. And the third was the maturity and size of your company. And based on this complexity, we developed some guidelines to help companies with the staffing of their customer success teams. So if you're a low complexity business, then we saw that ARR to CSM ratio of 4 million was appropriate. For the mid-tier medium complexity, it was 2 million, and for the high complexity businesses, it was more around 1 million. So that's the study where we actually sort of really dug into figuring out how do companies go about thinking around how to staff, what staffing levels are appropriate for them, and then how do they balance that against the cost, because there is a very important component here about actually seeing how to ultimately measure the cost around retention efforts within your company. So as we did this work, we spent about 4 to 6 months really diving into this customer retention cost work. And as we did that, it was very clear that CRC, as we call it, customer retention cost, is a critical missing component in the portfolio of metrics that we think SaaS executives, boards, investors, VCs should track and measure. We are definitely seeing a shift in SaaS companies towards measuring metrics around their existing customer base. Things like measuring your customer health, your customer lifetime value, product adoption, revenue per users. We are seeing all these different metrics sort of come into the portfolio that companies are reporting to the executive teams and boards. But we found that measuring customer retention cost and staffing is actually a big component of customer retention cost today, is not quite common. If you look at the counterpoint to the popular CAC ratio, or the customer acquisition cost ratio, which almost every SaaS company, will probably be measuring, they'll be reporting at the management meetings, at their board meetings, the concept of customer retention cost is still pretty invisible. And that is something that, we've been working with a lot of our customers to help them sort of better define that and to create better benchmarks around what customer retention costs should be for their business. Now, Evan, talking about reporting to the board, and we get this question from a lot of our customers around, what should be the scorecard that we use for our board members? I know you guys have done some work. I'm not sure whether it was from this study or from other work that you do, but you've definitely looked at what are some of the top metrics that companies report to their boards. If you'd like to sort of add a bit more over the CRC, which is still not a concept that I think has percolated into boardroom discussions.
Yes, that certainly was one of the questions that we posed. We asked, what are you reporting both to the C-suite and the board? So we want to know, well, we know there's some level of visibility, but what metrics are you reporting on? And many of these are pretty straightforward, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with these metrics. Certainly churn data or retention data, one form or both. Net Promoter Score was very, very popular. And that's certainly squarely in our area of expertise at Satrix Solutions. We've seen a great deal of interest in Net Promoter, not just the score, by the way, but as an operational discipline, but using the score as a KPI, as a guide that you can baseline and trend over time, looking at revenue from upsells and cross-sells, which I think, that really gets to the ROI of the customer success team, the business impact. So we're looking at how we're able to drive revenue through renewals and through upsell, cross-sell, and then in some cases through referrals. If we have a very strong reputation and a high Net Promoter Score, we can expect that that's going to hopefully lead to some more referrals. And then you see here overall customer satisfaction rate was also in the top tier or the second tier. So I think one of the most important points here is that almost every company that responded to our survey indicated they are reporting either one or more of these metrics to the C-suite and or the board of directors. And we prepare a lot of board-level reporting for our clients. Now, certainly the boards are looking at a lot of data across the business, so we might get one slide or two slides as it relates to the work that we're doing with our clients. But needless to say, it's getting exposure at that level. And I think that, once again, just validates the notion that customer success has a seat at the table, and they are garnering a greater degree of importance across the C-suite and the board of directors. So I think we're going to get Christine into the goals and challenges now.
Yeah, great. Thank you. New section, everything that people strive for, and the hurdles that they experience. So I'll go ahead and take it away, Evan. It sounds like your audio might be a little glitchy, but I continue on, and we'll let you know if it gets any worse.
Okay. Hopefully we'll be okay here. So a little bit in alignment with the metrics that are being reported, this looks at what are the goals of the customer success team. And so especially if you're just starting a team and you want to make a compelling argument to management as to why we should invest the resources here. And then importantly, how does customer success measure itself? So we have these objectives. How do we determine clearly that we are meeting or exceeding our objectives? And so we looked at some of the top goals, and this is what the respondents told us. 57% said product adoption, 55% said churn reduction. You look at onboarding and how successful the onboarding experience was. That was rated pretty highly. And then customer advocacy certainly was in the top tier as well. So, adoption and usage and strong customer advocacy were certainly among the top selections by a wide margin. And then if you look at some of the ones that were in that second tier, higher upsell, cross-sell renewals, and smoother implementation, fell into the second tier. So I think, Kaiser, you guys looked at a very similar question in your study, and since you had more respondents, it would be interesting to hear what you guys saw as well.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. We looked as well at what is the mandate of these customer success teams that are being set up. And there were a few interesting takeaways that I'd like to share with the group here. First, we are clearly seeing a shift, as I mentioned earlier. A year ago, it was pretty clear that customer success teams were heavily focused around churn mitigation. It was really very much around churn reduction and making sure that you can keep your customers. This year, product adoption and value delivery has certainly risen to be a common theme, and that's a clear shift from what we saw last year. Now, when we talk to companies in the market, this, I think, is manifesting itself in how companies are hiring and building their customer success teams. So we're seeing two things. One is companies are building teams to manage their customers and to deliver customer success more through programs and campaigns. That is a clear shift that we see. We see our customers and companies that we talk to who want to get to a more scalable way of delivering customer success. And as a result of that, we're also seeing that the hiring profile is moving a bit towards more data-oriented CSMs. We get a lot of requests from our customers and from companies who are looking at Totango about where should they be looking for customer success managers? Where should they be looking for their leadership? And we see a clear direction there where people are beginning to look at sort of more of the data-oriented and the data-driven executives to manage this function. The second thing the second takeaway that we got from asking people about their mandates and about their goals for customer success was the increased focus around customer advocacy, which is much in line with what Evan mentioned and what Satrix saw in their survey as well. And finally, I think what struck me is that onboarding has very much become, I would say, something like a sub-profession within customer success teams. It's getting a lot of attention, and with good reason. Like, if you think about it, it's very clear that if your onboarding is unsuccessful, you've pretty much lost the customer, even if you may be 12 months away from your renewal. So we see a heavy focus within customer success teams also on making sure that onboarding is really successful, and right from day one, they're making sure that not just the organization is all set up and implemented, but the users, at the user level, everyone is actually adopting and using your solution. So those are some of the main takeaways that we got, which I think is a move in a different direction from what we saw over the last couple of years. Now, let's sort of jump on and look at, what are some of the challenges that are facing, that these customer success teams are facing. And again, over year two, we are seeing a bit of a shift, and this is what I referred to when we did the polling question and the point that Evan spoke about. A year or two ago, I felt very clearly that there was a lot of angst around organizational obstacles, things like executive buy-in and definition of role. And a lot of executives and a lot of companies were sort of struggling with trying to find the place for customer success within their organizations. And today we feel like, for the most part, obviously those continue to be discussions, but for the most part, I feel like the industry has sort of moved beyond that. The focus is a lot more around operational issues, around how do you actually execute customer success in the right way? How do we get away, as Evan was talking earlier, from a firefighting and a reactive approach to customer success? How do we scale the teams so that we can deliver customer success not only to our big customers, but also to our small customers? And how can we do that without hiring an army of CSMs or account managers? How do we help our CSMs focus on the right data and the right customers so that we can eliminate all the noise? Because all of us who worked in customer-facing roles with, maybe as account managers or customer success managers know that it's really important to be able to prioritize who you focus your attention on, because it's really difficult when you have a huge portfolio of customers that you're managing. So we've seen a clear move in terms of companies trying to focus their attention and trying to get over now these challenges around how do you actually execute and implement customer success. And Evan, I know this was something that you guys looked at as well. I'm not sure from a challenges standpoint whether this aligns with what you saw in your survey. Were there any other challenges that you guys looked at or, unsurfaced?
Kaiser, it was quite similar actually, and we can move pretty quickly through this one because we have covered a lot of this content already. But we asked what are some of the biggest barriers that make it harder to fulfill the promise of the customer success organization. And we've talked about hiring and scaling both from the perspective of getting the necessary resources, but also finding the right people, company-wide buy-in, which, again, in our poll doesn't seem like it's as big of an issue as maybe the research study indicated it was. And then finally, accessing the right data. And as I alluded to earlier, there's so many different forms of data, but generally it bucketed into, data around what our customers expect, what they want, how they feel, what their sentiment is, and then also how we baseline and trend that information so we can assess whether we are being successful as a team. And finally, usage data. And so obviously, Kaiser, I know that product usage data is something that you guys are very much experts in. So you can probably talk to that a little bit better than I can.
Sure. Thanks, Evan. And yeah, it is interesting that in the survey you guys did at Satrix, you did sort of unsurface this issue around the right data. And we've always, sort of maintained that customer success is really, in many ways, a data problem. It's not just a CRM problem. It's not just a customer relationship problem. It is really a data problem. And it's interesting. I recently did a webinar with TSIA, and they recently looked at adoption of enterprise technologies and found that, not surprising, CRM and such, technologies that have been around have very high adoption within companies. But adoption of what they refer to as consumption monitoring and analytics is where they expect to see the biggest growth, and also where they are actually recommending their members to focus their technology investment decisions in 2015 and 2016. And if you think about it, this consumption monitoring and analytics sort of directly goes back to the data challenge that you're talking about and that you found in your survey. It's really about understanding how your customers are using your product, what are they doing, what are they not doing in your product, and whether they are ultimately getting the results that they expect from your product, whether you're as you said, whether you're able to fulfill the promise. And according to TSIA, it's interesting, they do a lot of research with customer support and customer success professionals. And according to them, what they call consumption monitoring and analytics is one of the largest opportunity areas for customer success teams to boost productivity and to scale their customer success efforts. And what we found from our survey was very much in line with this. We definitely saw that CRM, even within customer success teams, is today the most widely adopted technology. And there are only 25% of SaaS and subscription companies that are actually using a customer success specific platform today. So this is definitely an area where I think the market is still growing. It's early days, and as TSIA has sort of recommended to their membership, and as we are seeing in the market, there is a huge shift in getting to using more specific customer success technology that goes beyond and extends beyond traditional CRM. So with that, I think we'll move over to the compensation side. I think that was the third main topic that we were going to cover, and I'll quickly walk through that before we wrap up the webinar. So this, as all of you know, is obviously a hot topic. We get a lot of questions from people in the market about customer success compensation because it's a new profession and there truly are not enough benchmarks compared to more established roles in sales and marketing. So this is an area that is of a lot of interest to the industry. And what you see here in front of you are the median compensation ranges that we found by level. So for Chief Customer Officers and VPs of Customer Success, we see the median range as $150,000 to $175,000. For Directors of Customer Success, it's in the $125,000 to $150K range. And for Customer Success Managers, it's in the $75,000 to $100K range. Now, one of the trends that we, again, noticed vis-a-vis our study from last year, and given that we've done this for 3 years, we can see some trends developing, is that this year it looks like compensation is more uniformly distributed. It's not concentrated as much in certain tiers as we saw last year. And that could lead us sort of to conclusion that actually hiring in customer success organizations is today happening more uniformly across the board. Companies are growing their CSM teams, they're growing their mid-level teams of directors of customer support, and they're also investing in building their leadership in customer success. So that is definitely a trend that we've seen this year. Now, when it comes to compensation structures, a large majority, I would say, almost 75% of the respondents said that they receive variable compensation in addition to a base salary. And the most popular compensation structure was base salary plus a bonus. We found that commissions are less common within customer success teams, but still it was not negligible. 20% of customer success teams did get compensated on a commission basis. And this is an area which we found not just through the survey, but also through our discussions with executives within SaaS companies. This is truly a very, relatively controversial topic within the industry. There are many people who feel like, paying customer success people based on commissions puts too much of a focus on revenue and does not create the right environment, the right behavior, the right mindset for customer success teams. So this is something that I think we're still in the early days, and maybe in the next couple of years, I think we may see more alignment and more convergence around right compensation structures. Now, given that bonuses are a lot more prevalent within customer success teams versus commissions, let's take a quick look at what are some of the main components on which people pay out bonuses. On the whole, it's clear that, overall team and company performance is clearly the primary driver of bonuses. For a sizable portion, about 37%, again, bonuses are also based on attainment of renewal and upsell goals, and that comes again with the same controversy and the same debates about whether that's the right thing to do. And a much smaller percentage we found where companies were actually paying bonuses on specific MBOs like customer onboarding, customer training, customer case studies. So those are some of the main components that we saw by which companies pay out bonuses. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Christine to wrap up this webinar, and we'll wrap up with some Q&A at the end.
Great. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Kaiser and Evan. So what you see displayed on the screen is where you can find access to the 2 full reports. Totango is storing the report in its resource library, and Satrix Solutions is providing the direct link right there. And that's where someone was asking me about more of the granular data about how many specific respondents there were, breakdown by titles and industry and whatnot. So all of that is provided in the report. And I think we have, if we can, time for one more poll. What we would love to know from you guys in the audience is just what areas are you looking for help in this profession? What other topics would you want to continue to learn more or gain information on? Right here you see about 6 options. If you guys could take time to go ahead and submit real quick, and then we'll get to lots of questions that we have. We're starting to see quite a few answers coming in. And Evan, if you wanted to kind of talk about why we're doing this poll.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, as I mentioned at the start of the call, one of our areas of expertise, and we're experts in voice of customer and voice of employee programs, but we're quite adept at gathering feedback from large groups of people and analyzing that and turning it into something meaningful. So part of the reason for asking this question is, hey, what can we help you with in a future study? What would be useful, valuable, actionable to you for us to conduct another study that would help you to make decisions in your organization? So that was really the driving force behind trying to assess where you'd like us to maybe look next.
Great, thank you. And so we just displayed the results. Looks like measuring customer health came in 55%, followed by defining the right metrics. And then, it seems like people might want some more information on all of these different areas, which is great. Thank you for participating. And I know there's tons of questions, so let's just jump right ahead. And if for some reason you need to hop off early, we will follow up with you on your questions after the webinar, and you could email Kaiser and Evan directly. Their email addresses are displayed, as well as some Twitter handles if you'd like to chat about today's conversation. But if Kaiser and Evan, if you want to start looking at the questions, Kaiser, I think some people would like some clarification about the compensation side that I'm going to display right here. Can you talk about, sure, are these the base salaries, net of bonuses? People want to know clarification on the manager. Is that the practitioner or the manager of the team? Could you just clarify a little bit of this?
Sure. So the question we asked specifically in the survey was total compensation, including the bonus or the commission. So that addresses the first question. And regarding the second question, the manager is more the customer success manager. It's about the practitioner. It's about the person who's on the front line with customers day in and day out.
Great, thank you. So, if we dive right in, we had a slide about who the head of customer success reports to, and someone was curious about the title and scope of the head of customer success. What sort of titles do these people go by, and what are their key responsibilities? I can go ahead and pull up that slide. Evan, do you want to elaborate? Because I think it was your survey question, and then Kaiser weigh in.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just throw out a couple of titles. I mean, oftentimes it's the vice president or senior vice president of customer success. In some companies that maybe are more service oriented, it's the nomenclature is SVP of client services, and then of course more and more companies have chief customer officers. And customer success is reporting directly to the CCO or a chief customer officer. Is that what you're seeing, Kaiser? Are you guys seeing anything different?
No, you're correct. It's very similar, and we do see a much larger percentage of chief customer officers now, and we see typically the mandate of a chief customer officer stretches across all the post-sales functions, everything from professional services and consulting to training and technical support, and then also including customer success. So that is definitely a configuration within organizations that we're seeing more and more. Very often, there is a VP of customer success, or as you mentioned, an SVP of customer success, who is separate from the rest of the support functions and reports directly to the CEO. And that depends on the size of the organization. It depends on how they're structured within the rest of the team as well. I think related to that, Christine, you asked a question more around sort of what are the around what is sort of the mandate, or what are the objectives of these customer success teams. I think broadly, and this again is some work that we saw through the TSI report that we did, but there are some clear mandates. I mean, obviously, product adoption and making sure that your customers are actually getting the business results from your product. I think that I would say is the number one mandate ultimately. And what flows through that, or what follows through with that, is sort of then the customer retention and the customer expansion mandates. And in some organizations, customer success teams are more directly responsible for customer retention and for customer expansion. And in some companies there are, and I think that's that's a place which is again relatively controversial. There are a lot of companies that have debates about that, and a lot of companies where they have actually tried one and then moved to the other, where in some companies where they earlier had customer success teams responsible for retention and upsells, over time they had realized that they actually want to take that away from the customer success team and make the customer success team really more focused around product adoption, around customer engagement, and just really being a partner to the customer and making sure that they're getting the business results that they expect from their solution.
Great, thank you. And so we've had a couple questions about the NPS scores and customer satisfaction. So someone asked, they use NPS scores to measure the overall satisfaction. Do you have any other way of measuring this? And someone else asked, are there any other customer satisfaction metrics other than NPS? So Evan, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. And not to nitpick the question certainly, but just think about Net Promoter and really how it evolved, and the intent behind it is it's intended to be a higher bar than just customer satisfaction. So CSAT and in general questions around customer satisfaction had historically been the most common measurement. And what the founders of Net Promoter stipulated was, look, this measure of loyalty, which is what Net Promoter attempts to identify, is a higher bar. In other words, I can be satisfied but still defect or churn at a pretty high rate. But if I have loyalty to your organization, if I have advocacy, intimacy with your company, then that's harder to attain. But when you do attain it, it means all of these wonderful things as it relates to retention, upsell, cross-sell, reputation, and so on and so forth. So Net Promoter is certainly has taken on a much larger role as a measure of customer loyalty. There are a lot of companies that still create their own sort of hybrid measures. So, using Net Promoter as a one and only question is a little bit of a thing of the past that we found in B2B. Most of our clients are actually embedding Net Promoter within, maybe a slightly lengthier survey, and they're looking to measure a couple of different elements. How likely are you to renew? Or how likely are you to maybe buy more from us? Also looking at things like top box or top two box measurements on some very important attributes. And then importantly, many of our clients are not just looking at their company level scores as an example. They're looking at different segments. So we start to assess the level of satisfaction and loyalty among this group of customers, which are much more important and critical and central to our growth and to our strategy, and contrast that with a different group of customers. So looking at it based on various segmentations is also really important.
Great, thank you. We only have a couple minutes left. It seems like there's quite a few questions about the differences between different teams in the organization, so account management, customer support, and customer success. Kaiser, do you want to elaborate on maybe like your thoughts or Totango's point of view on the differences between those three different functions?
Sure. So let's start by talking about customer success and account management, because I think those are closely related, and a lot of people sort of see that as being similar functions, and they really are. I don't think, some companies may call them account managers and some companies may call them customer success managers, but ultimately it's a matter of what exactly is the role. And I think the title aside, what is really different is how do you actually go about executing as an account manager or a customer success manager? And I think I'd like to sort of explain the difference, no matter what the term is, about how the role of that frontline account manager or customer success manager has changed today vis-a-vis, let's say, 5 years ago, or when you may have been working with customers who were using on-premise software. And in those situations, I think your role was very different. Account managers were largely, relationship-driven, many times sales-driven executives or professionals. And what we are seeing today, given sort of the move towards SaaS and cloud, is that there is a fundamental difference in the way your business runs, and there's a fundamental difference with how you interact with your customers. Today, a SaaS company or any company that has a digital engagement with their customers has a level of visibility into their customers that is just unprecedented. You know exactly what your customer is doing in your solution. You know, or you should know, whether your customer is getting to the end result that they require from your solution. And if you have this data, it can really change the way you go about doing customer success or account management, no matter what you call it. And so I think customer success in many ways is the new progression of this profession, where now, based on the data that you have and based on the insight that you have about your customers, you can actually impact customer success. You're not just an account manager who is in touch with your customers to make sure that they are, getting what they want. You actually have visibility into whether your customers are seeing success, and you can actually make a difference. And I think that's really, the semantics aside, I think the role of a customer success manager or an account manager has really changed. And in terms of comparing that vis-a-vis customer support, I think customer support obviously has been around for a long time, and it is typically a function that is responding to a customer or helping a customer on a particular issue. And customer success, to draw a distinction, is not necessarily focused around a specific issue. It's about making sure that ultimately your customer is getting the value that they need from your product, even if they may not have an issue. And very often a customer may not have an issue if they're not using your product or they're not engaged enough. But you as a customer success manager need to engage with the customer, even if there isn't a ticket, even if there isn't an issue that the customer reaches out to you for. And so I think that's really the distinction between these front office post-sales functions.
Great, thank you. And I think that was going to be our last question today. Want to thank everyone for taking a full hour out of their time to join us and learn about the state of the customer success profession. Thank you both, Kaiser and Evan, for sharing these findings. For anyone that didn't have a question answered, we'll go ahead and follow up shortly after the webinar with your answers. And again, feel free to reach out to us. We love new ideas and new ways and new content that you to help you as your team grows in this profession. So with that, Evan, Kaiser, any last remarks?
No, thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks for having us.
Everyone, bye-bye.